Everybody, welcome to today's show. Welcome to Advocate Information Highway. I'm your host, Anthony Rito-Duke, and we have a great topic for today's show in which it is proper police reform and disciplining rioters, etc. Now, I just got done hosting my show on Spreaker.com called Disabled Reality, and I want to continue this topic that I discussed on there into this show. And um, as I was saying on that show, you know, we need proper police reform because for way too long, for years and years, probably even decades or whatever it is, bad police officers have been getting away with way too much for way too long, and that needs to stop. And we need to protect the good police officers because there are many good police officers out there too. And it's just that the bad police officers make the good police officers look bad, and it's got to stop. And we really have to protect the good police officers too, in which by giving them more benefits, okay, we need to protect the good police officers from uh, revengeful attacks from the bad police officers. We need to protect the good police officers from the police departments who say, listen, if you file a complaint or testify against that bad police officer, we'll uh, turn against you as well. We got to stop that. It's got to stop completely. And we also need to stop the police departments from having such a huge control over courts and jurors, too. That's got to stop. The police departments need to say to the bad police officers, you do a major crime like murder and stuff, not only will you be fired, we'll make sure that your butts are placed into a prison cell as well. Bottom line, we need to do it. We need to be fair here, people. Also, in being fair, like I said, we need to take good care of the good police officers too by giving them more benefits and stuff. But we can also give them more like body cameras. We can give them more cameras for their police cars and stuff like that. Show the good police officers that we're on their side too. Let's be fair across the board, right? And speaking of which, we also need to put these rioters in prison as well. Okay, we need to tell these rioters that their actions are not tolerated either. And these rioters, if people have been really looking at these rioters, these are teenagers or kids in their early 20s and stuff like that. These kids are looting, they are breaking into banks, stealing. They're doing so much damage to it. And we need to put them in prisons as well. Now, in New York City, the mayor has also took some of the funding, not all of it, he took some of the funding from that was going to the NYPD for so long, um, and saying some of that funding is going to community services as well. Now, the NYPD is still getting a good chunk of funding, but there's more funding that's going to community services as well, in which there's a lot of community leaders that are saying, we would like to have this program for the younger generation and let's help get them on the right track and stuff like that. And that's great. It's great to have these community programs too. And um, it'll help a lot of the younger generation. Yes, this is a step in the right direction. Yes, but we need to raise that bar a bit too, and also putting a lot of these uh, younger generation people, like that are in the street gangs, that are rioting, looting, and stuff. We need to put them in prisons too. Being fair all across the board here, ladies and gentlemen. And because we have to really think about this, do you really think that these street gang members are going to say, hey, you know what? Let's do some volunteer work. You think they're really going to do that? Do you think they're going to say, you know what? We need to build up the community that we destroyed? You think they're going to do that? You think they're going to go to the banks and say, you know what? We're the ones that stole your money. You think they're going to do that? No, absolutely not. So, in the act of all fairness, and again, to be all across the board in fairness, the, let's get the FBI involved and let's capture. We're not going to capture them all. Let's be realistic here, but let's capture as many as we can of these rioters and say your behinds are going to be put into a real prison as well. Meaning, let's get rid of juvie hall. Okay, get rid of that. It does nothing, and would put them in a real prison cell with the adults that are the real murderers, the real rapists, the real drug addicts. Put them in a real prison cell with the adults. If you want to act big time, we're going to treat you like the big time. That's it. Now, like I said again, and I'm going to repeat myself again, yes, it's a great thing to have these community services, these community programs. It's a step in the right direction, but we have to cover all bases as well. To put the bad police officers in the prison, put these rioters in prison as well, all across the board, being fair. Now, in many, I think in Kentucky, they've come up with a law that's saying that for the officers that are serving warrants, that they have to knock on the door. I strongly believe that they did that in the past and then it stopped for a long time, and now it's being put back. That's fine. Have them knock on the door. That's okay. That's a step in the right direction. Fine. They'll knock on the door or bang on the door. Okay, fine. But we got to be fair all across the board. And speaking of which, okay, um, like that gentleman, that elderly gentleman up in Buffalo, New York, the 75-year-old man that got pushed by the police and he fell down and he was bleeding from the head. That poor man now has brain damage. Okay. And he's lucky to still be alive. He really is. And um but he, like I said, he now has brain damage, and those officers need to be properly disciplined. Bring them to court. Let the courts have their way with them, with these bad police officers. We need to do it. And speaking of which, um, and I said this in my other show on Disabled Reality on Spreaker.com, the officer that killed Mr. Floyd has a record, a bad record, that's like the size of Texas. You can't have officers like that. And since we're on this topic, and I forgot to mention this on my show Disabled Reality, there is testimony from an eyewitness that said that the officer who killed Mr. Floyd knew Mr. Floyd because Mr. Floyd and that police officer worked together at a club, and there was animosity between the two of them. So hey, that's another piece of evidence. That's another eyewitness that's going to most likely testify in the court. And the people have asked me, what would really be what do I think about the Mr. Floyd case if that bad officer is going to go to prison? My strong belief, and this is just my own strong personal belief, with this particular case, I personally think that this officer is more than most likely going to go to prison. And is it an uphill battle to prove this case? Absolutely, yes. But here's the thing, you had two coroner reports, two separate ones, right? And if I remember correctly, if I read it correctly, and don't quote me on this, but if I read it correctly, strongly believe that maybe both coroner reports did stipulate that it was murder, but with the underlying conditions that each one found, there was a difference in the underlying conditions as well. So again, I'm just going according to what I'm reading on social on the internet as well. And but I strongly believe that with that that the coroner's report are going to say, prove that it was murder. That's number one. Um, it's going to come out that the officer that killed Mr. Floyd has a record that goes way back, and it's not a good record at all. And like that bad record is like the size of Texas. That's going to go against him. You're going to have this witness testimony proving that this officer who killed Mr. Floyd knew Mr. Floyd and that there was animosity already between the two of them from when they worked at this club together. So all this is going to be presented, and I strongly believe that with this particular evidence being now presented, collected, and being put forward, this is what's going to hopefully and more than most likely have the jurors say guilty and put this officer in prison. Okay? Because that's where he really needs to be. So that's just my personal opinion. I'm not an attorney. And I'm just calling it as I see it. And let's being fair here too. Now, since we're talking about being fair, um, like I said, the elderly gentleman that approached the police officers up in Buffalo, New York, which these officers pushed him. This old man fell to the ground. He was bleeding from the head, now has brain damage. And um, not only should those police officers be disciplined by the courts, but let's be fair here. You cannot uh, approach a police officer like that at all. There's got to be also a law stating that nobody can approach a police officer like that either. It will be illegal for anybody to approach a police officer like that too. We got to be fair all across the board. Okay. Am I completely against those police officers for pushing this old man? Absolutely. But I'm also in favor of being fair. Of that old man should not have approached the police officers at all. At all. Now, if that old man did not approach the police officers, maybe this incident wouldn't have happened. And if this older man is part of the protesters, that old man should have just stayed with the protesters and let the police officers approach them. Because there's the difference, okay? Let's just use smart here. Let's just use common sense. And if the police were to approach them in a bad way, then at least this old man more than most likely would not have brain damage. And more evidence could be against those police officers. Who knows how else it would have turned? But it's much better if the protesters would have just stayed together and just let the police officers approach them. That's just the bottom line. That's really the reality of things here, people. Let's just be fair and use common sense. All right. And also, if any police officer approaches you, do not offend them. Do not try to attack them. Just be calm and just listen to them. Okay. And uh, and really just do the right thing that way. And because that'll work more in your favor. And for those that say, "Oh, I'm not going to listen to any police officer. I know my rights," and blah blah blah, and I'll verbally attack them and uh, whatever the case may be. Listen, if you didn't do anything wrong, okay, If a cop pulls you over, if you didn't do anything wrong, you have nothing to worry about. Now, again, but there's also the other side of the coin that there is racial profiling, that there are, like I said, a lot of bad police officers out there that would just pull over a person of color just for no reason at all, which again is also not right. Okay. And there's many people of color that have cooperated with the police, and in which, again, those particular bad police officers even would still abuse people of color or whomever, and even though they may be listening to the police officers and acting accordingly and stuff, and the bad police officers would still not do the right thing. So it's got this needs to be fixed. It needs to be dealt with. The negativity, the violence needs to stop all across the board. And um, and there's unfortunately a lot of police officers that are saying, if you're going to discipline us, we just won't do our job, and we'll go on strike and this and that. And really, because you're being disciplined. And listen, if you're not a bad police officer, if you're not the one that's committing the illegal acts, then you should have nothing to worry about. Okay, and don't act stupid. Don't act ridiculous just because you got a badge and a gun. And don't go by the brothers and sisters of the bad. If the bad police officers are doing something bad, we're still going to stand by them. No, 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 no. Stand up against them, and you say, "Listen, you can't do this. This is not going to be tolerated. We're not going to stand for it." And um, if you're not going to do your job, you shouldn't be able to have a job. And there's a lot of officers that are saying, no, um, if our city elected officials are just going to turn against us when we have a tough job, then no matter what we do, we're going to be wrong and whatever. So we're not going to do anything. Can't have an attitude like that either. That you cannot have that mentality either. Okay, you still got to do your job, no matter what, and you just got to do your job the right way. And we got to stand together. Our elected officials and the people in the community have to stand together with the good police officers, not with the bad ones, but with the good ones. Okay. And um, just like a perfect example, I believe it was in Minnesota. I think it was like 13 police officers that went to a congressperson's office, and they were caught just laying down in this congressperson's office and drinking this congressperson's coffee and eating and so on. Meanwhile, there was rioters right outside around them, looting and stuff. You can't do that, man. You can't do that. And these are the officers that, like I said, that have the mentality of, well, if we do something, we're going to get blamed for it. So if we're going to get blamed for something, we just won't do anything. You can't have that mentality either. All right. And we got to get rid of this mentality of people saying, well, if an officer touches me, no matter what, I'll cry like a baby. You can't do that. If a police, if somebody's being rowdy and stuff, they got to be disciplined too. Let's be fair here, people. If a teenager or a young person is out of hand and out of control, let's say on the subway or wherever, they got to be disciplined too. Let's be fair here. And unfortunately, there's also a lot of parents who are saying, I don't have time for my kids. I can't watch them 24/7. There's a lot of people out there that say, oh, poor babies, they had a hard life or whatever. To hell with all that. To hell with all that. Like I said before, if you act big time, you're going to get treated like you're big time. Plain and simple. Discipline, proper discipline, not illegal discipline, but proper discipline has to come back. It's been long gone for way too long. So, and that's part of the problem too. A lot of these kids are not disciplined properly from their parents or legal guardians. And that's why these kids act like that. A lot of them are spoiled. A lot of them are spoiled brats. And who feel like they can get away with anything because they've been getting away with everything. And it's got to stop. So that's just my own personal opinion, ladies and gentlemen. You can take it or leave it, whatever. And but anyways, I wanted to remind everybody that aside from this show, Advocate Information Highway, in which I host this show right after I host each show on Spreaker.com. Like after I host my show, Equality and Rights for All on Spreaker.com on Thursdays, I will host an episode of this show here on YouTube. After I host my show, Disabled Reality on Spreaker.com on Fridays, I will host another episode of this show here on YouTube as well. And I also wanted to remind everybody about my business, my website, which is Advocate Information Highway. I'm sorry, which is Advocate Information Highway. And the link to there is awldny.com. You guys can check out all the pages on there. The last page of the website is the donations page. Your donations help us at Advocate Information Highway to reach our goal, in which our goal is to help many different people from multiple different communities, locally, nationally, and worldwide. So your donations help us to meet that goal. I also wanted to remind everybody about the store page of my website, in which you'll see 3 sections on there. The first section is where you'll see the link to my internet store on Zazzle.com, in which I designed a lot of products and they're up for sale on there, and you can shop to your heart's content. The second section is where you'll see the links to both books that I wrote, in which you can take a sneak peek into each book that I wrote, and you can purchase both books that I wrote as well. And the third section of the store page on my website is where you'll see the link to the website that my husband and I have together called oddsandends.com. That's ODDZ like zebra, N like Nancy, ENDS.com. And you guys can shop to your heart's content on there as well. And so with that, take care, everybody. Bye.